Hi, I'm Drew.
And I'm Sam.
And welcome to Drewling Samantics.
Right, I'm here, Drew. Oh! That's not quite what I expected to see.
Don't worry, I'm here.
Hey!
Sam, here's one for you. Look, it's a mugshot.
Oh, for goodness sake. If you're not on YouTube, he was holding his Drewling Samantics mug in front of his face. It's not funny, it's not big, it's not clever. Don't encourage him. How are you, mate? All right?
I'm very well, thank you, Sam. Yeah, cheers. I'm going to have a slurp now I said that.
I was going to say, if I do it, it doesn't quite work. I mean, I just look like I'm underwater. Never mind. Anyway, cheers.
Never mind. Cheers, mate. Yeah, I mean, good week. We've been auditioning people, seeing people for our production Jungle Law for February half term. I'll tell you a little bit more about that when we've got a little bit more time. But I've been busy working on that, so that's fun. We're finishing the script. We've got our actors, so yeah, all good.
Amazing.
Thank you, mate.
And as you say, we actually haven't got much time today, and that's not because the episode's any shorter or anything. It's just because, as everyone is well aware, we've got a guest coming soon. What a guest we've got today. So, but there are, and I'm not stealing your thunder here, because you'll know more about it than me, but I was just going to sort of do half an intro to it. We do need to do some updates, don't we? Because some of the news articles that we've addressed last week, and in fact, possibly before that as well, there's a couple of things going on. The one that I'm going to mention is Alec Baldwin having pleaded, can't remember which one it is.
Pleaded.
Not guilty. He says he's not guilty. So obviously the court case is ongoing and things that have not developed much further than that. But he is saying not guilty to something. What was it? Manslaughter?
Involuntary manslaughter. So I believe
that's the update that I saw. Now I know there are updates on other things which you'll know far more about.
Well, it's two little stories. In true newscasters fashion. There's a couple of things.
Like a newsreader. What is
I know. I've written some notes because I've got to be right about this because equity, who are becoming more and more important to actors now as our rights and things in the business change, particularly things like AI and repeat fees and stuff like that, and streaming services and along with other forms of entertainment. Everything is changing for an actor, and we do need protecting more and more. And there's a story that came out last October. Spotlight, who are the industry go-to casting directory for pretty much most actors in the business. Once you're an actor, agents work through it, casting directors work through it, and it has some 90,000 members. It's an extraordinary Spotlight, and it's an extraordinary tool. And last year they wanted to add a new level, a premier level, to their membership. And some people felt that this was ostracizing other members. It would create a two-tier membership. Equity sort of got involved and said, we think this might be unfair. And Spotlight capitulated. They dropped it. And they said, it's fine. We'll work on other ways of improving our services. Brilliant. They listen to equity. They listen to actors. Fabulous. Thank you, Spotlight. However, equity have not let the ball drop. Now, I didn't know this, but in every other industry, apart from the entertainment industry, charging for services such as Spotlight is illegal. It is illegal to charge, and I'm going to quote, it is illegal to charge the workforce for services such as Spotlight, which is quoted from Equity. So we are the only industry where it is allowed for a service such as Spotlight to charge. I don't know the ins and outs, but it would seem that other casting services that do the same are probably the only ones as well. So Equity have said, and there is a law saying you're not allowed to make more money than is necessary to keep the publication and to promote the publication.
So essentially, if we're looking outside of this, because Spotlight's primary function from an actor's or performer's point of view is to view jobs, it's like a job listing site essentially.
Yes.
What's being said is nowhere else in any kind of vocation are you charged to apply for work. Essentially, like very
Yeah,
literally.
I mean, obviously there are more services that Spotlight supply. I mean, there is the online listings for us, so our information, our credits details are out there. They supply other things as well. The Spotlight publication goes out each year. They have resources that actors can use. There's an awful lot more involved than just a jobs list. We understand. However, with their 90,000 memberships, Equity, and I'm working from an equity source here, have said that they probably make around about $1 million a month. And so saying, Equity are going, do you really need to make that amount of money to keep the publication going? So Equity have challenged Spotlight to present their accounts and say, this is how much we're making. We need or do not need this money.
Yes.
It may, and this is me going, it may result in a reduction in fees. Who knows? But it's an interesting take on the further discussions with Spotlight. I know how important Spotlight is to us as performers, to cast the directors, to the business.
Yes.
So saying, have they maybe exploited that to a point now where Equity feels we need to pull them back a little bit? I don't know. If that is the case, let's hope it is to everyone's advantage, not only the performers, Equity, but also to Spotlight, because it is an ongoing relationship that is old and important. But in neither case should anybody be exploited. And I think Equity are acting for their members to look after them. Following on from that, we also mentioned last week that Equity and the ENO are in discussions about their members of the chorus and the orchestra. Now, on the 1st of February, the membership, and I think over 95% of the ENO's members voted for strike action, their workforce.
Yeah.
And the first night, the 1st of February was the first night, The Handmaid's Tale, that was to be boycotted. There was a strike. It wouldn't have happened. An interim agreement was made. This is only an interim agreement. I don't know the details of that. They have not been published. But the strike didn't take place. Equity are now talking on behalf of the chorus to the ENO to take negotiations further. And the Musicians Union are talking to the ENO, who represent the orchestra. So those, I don't know. As an outsider, I would have gone, the powers that be don't want a big opera to be cancelled.
Yeah.
But it does show, and strike action is still on the table if the equity and their members don't see some resolution. But it does show that if action helps. It speaks. And I also, as a committed member of Equity, I would say, if people are out there going, Equity, I'm going, no, support this union, because it does fight for our rights. These two cases in point.
Yes.
So interesting to see what further developments happen. But,
and as always, we'll keep up to date on everything we can and keep the news coming. You can stack your papers again now if you have to.
No, I got two bit more. But
okay, go on.
No, it's we occasionally mention people that have passed away, influential people in the industry, and two people from quite opposite ends of the industry, but equally have had a massive impact. Christopher Fettis, who was director principal of Drama Centre, no relation. We shared a surname, but I never met the man. I've met many people that he taught. He ran the Drama Centre for many years with Yat Malgren, who was his business partner, and they were so influential. And Drama Centre was an incredible drama school that their influence with actors. They turned out some amazing actors. Their influence, and Christopher Fettis' influence in the business, it cannot be doubted. He wrote some amazing books. He directed some amazing plays. And one of our, alumni, one of Drewling Samantics alumni, Sam Clemens, and I was only alerted to the death of Christopher Fettis because Sam wrote a beautiful personal eulogy, a personal thanks to Christopher Fettis, because Sam Clemens one of our ex-guests. I've worked with him closely. A very, very talented actor and filmmaker. He wrote this wonderful eulogy saying thank you very much to Christopher. And there are a lot of actors sitting out there now, hundreds of actors sitting out there now who have their careers to, Christopher Fettis to thank for his careers. Notably, people like Paul Bettany, Tom Hardy, Simon Callow, the late, great Helen McCrory, Colin Firth, Penelope Wilton, to mention a tiny few of theatre alumni that thank him.
Influential is the word, isn't it? Like just represented so much and did so much for the industry.
Incredible teacher and mentor. And someone else who has influenced greatly, but on the other side of the Atlantic, the beautiful Cheetah Rivera, which most people will remember as Anita from West Side Story. I mean, God, she was beautiful, and wow, could she dance. I mean, she spent 7 decades as the queen of Broadway. I mean, she had Tony Awards, and I mean, she was Velma in Chicago, Rose in Bye Bye Birdie. She did some amazing, incredible stuff. 2018, she won a Tony Lifetime Achievement Award, and there were many stars saying, "Right, let's dim the lights of Broadway for someone who is irreplaceable." And it connects gently to our guest today. She was also she broke the ground for Latino performers in mainstream film and in on Broadway, and you'll see why that works in a minute. But I mean,
essentially, the word icon is possibly overused, but in this sense, absolutely accurate.
Oh yeah. And she said, and she gave, I misquote her slightly, but she's the last part. She said, "I cannot imagine spending my life in any other way other than the theatre." And her passing shot was, "Theatre is life." I mean, speaks volumes. Anyway, that's it. We remember Cheetah Rivera and Christopher Fettis very fondly.
Raise a glass to them. Thank you for all they did.
Indeed.
And as you say, a slight link there. I mean, you talk about them being people who did so much for their relative industries and were enormously talented, and equally the Latin America connection. And that brings us nicely onto today's guest, who equally has done enormous things in his industry, is immensely talented, and also told me, and I don't know if you know this, but he said he was a member of the SAS, and I thought, what? The SAS? And he's like, yeah, South American Scouser. I was like, oh, for goodness sake! But no, just I'm so pleased that we finally managed to get this man on the show.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everyone listening and watching, you are in for an absolute treat, because he's had such an incredible career, done so much, and has so much more to come. And he's waiting right now. So I'm going to stop rabbiting. Shall we just bring him in and let him tell the people who he is and what he does?
Yes, please, Sam. I'm really looking forward to this.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, meet our wonderful guest, Mr. Tony Jopia. And there he is. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching on YouTube, do not adjust your sets. No, it's not Harry Potter, despite being under the stairs in his cupboard wearing a rather fetching pair of glasses. No, today's guest is the wonderful Mr. Tony Jopia. Welcome, sir. How are you? Long time no see.
Indeed. Hello. It's lovely to be in your presence, both of you. Thank you very much for having me on.
Bless you.
Pleasure to meet you, Tony. Pleasure to meet you, mate. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, well, it's lovely, like I said, to be here on this rather cloudy, but I'm sure it's going to be a very cheerful hour or so.
Oh, of course. Yeah, we are honoured to have you. But for those people out there who are joining us now, either watching or listening, that haven't had the absolute pleasure of meeting you or who don't know who you are, can you please, Tony, give us a proper introduction? Tell us all about who you are, what you do.
Well, thank you. What an intro that was. Yeah, I'm Tony Jopia, or pronounced Jopia. And I'm a film producer and director, and also a creative director. It's two sort of sides to me. One, I produce indie movies. I'm building my way with a portfolio, along with some very talented people who get involved with me to create these films that always seem to get themselves globally released. And we have some nice sort of treats to talk about that are coming up. And alongside that, I also service major broadcasters from around the world and provide all their on-air services, and from trailers and promos and sizzles and whatever they need to promote their content, both on air and on social media, they come to me.
Brilliant. I mean, do you get time to breathe? I mean, you're a very, very busy man.
I am very much dedicated to my job. Always have been since a very early age. The thing is, my son. I have a son who loves his tattoos, and he knows I'm not a fan, so I've not have any tattoos. But I gave him a piece of paper when he was a young boy, and and it said on it, "Find something you love to do, and you'll never work a day in your life." So of course that's perfect for me, because I love my job. So in terms of, do I ever do anything else? Of course. I mean, I'm a proud dad, and I love my boys, my two boys, and I try and make myself available for them as much as possible. But of course, you do have to have an earning, and you have to make a business work. But I do love my job. So I do end up doing a lot of things, and it does eat up a lot of my time. But just to conclude on that point about why I mentioned about my son having a tattoo, is because inevitably he got that tattooed on his arm. And it was, I suppose, quite a something that I couldn't really get angry with anyway. But I did say to him at the time when I gave it to him, so what are you going to do? And he said, nothing, Dad. I said, why? He says, well, that's what I love to do, nothing. So I said, that's not really the idea, Alex. But anyway.
Slightly backfires, maybe, but what a wonderful tribute, what a wonderful gesture to then tattoo the wise words of his dad. But I mean, you say, Tony, obviously the business we are in its different areas is ever consuming, and there is always so much to do. But if you enjoy it, then it doesn't often feel like work. And I've had the absolute pleasure of working with you. You directed and produced Blade of the Assassin, still awaiting release, but we're hoping very soon. And obviously, just being on set with you, I can see your passion for what you do and how much you love your work. Where did it sort of stem from? Have you always been a big fan of movies and film, or was it something in your childhood that sort of spawned it? What kind of got you to where you are now?
Well, if I was to go right back to the very beginning, to take you to Chile in 1967, giving my age away. Basically, according to my family, they tell me that I was 1 year old and they went to the cinema, and they put me just to one side whilst they obviously dealt with something. And according to them, I walked my first steps along the cinema aisle. But that's just them. I don't know if it's truth. Obviously, can't quite remember it. But apparently, gravity took its course, because it was obviously slightly downhill. And I think I went and did a couple of steps and tumbled the rest of the way. I guess imitating the Rock in Raiders of the Lost Ark, when it's kind of like coming out, probably something like that. But film from the minute I arrived in this country as a political refugee. I came along with my father, who left Chile in 1974 with all the problems that happened there. So I was this very little young boy following in my father, really, because it was me and him. But obviously my father was the main person who had to leave. And that brought me to Liverpool, where I remember going. There was a local cinema at the time called The Classic. And really, for me, I couldn't speak any English when I arrived, but the big cinema is kind of like this opening to a world of magic and adventure. And I saw a film, and having spent a decent amount of time being escorted out by Amnesty, and going to lots of different countries, my dad took me to see Airport 75, which after spending a number of flights to get out of Chile was probably not. I mean, like, let's face it, you know what it's about, don't you? You know, it's about this airplane, you know. And I'm thinking, crikey, well, we were lucky, weren't we? And so that really caught my eye. It just kind of said, I remember specifically sitting there, not being able to understand the words, but watching everybody completely engaged in this magical story with Charlton Heston. And I was thinking, that's what I want to do. And it really, I can pin it down to that movie. Of course, after that came Star Wars and Grease, you know, another movie, and Superman, and all these movies. And one movie that very few film fans know of, which is called Damnation Alley, which starred George Peppard from the A-Team. But these films just completely transported me, and kind of I knew from that age. And in fact, I was shown once a book when I was just learning to write English, and I would have been 9 years old. And I wrote there, I want to be a film director. And my auntie kept that book for when I was 9. Wow. So I know for a fact that I knew then that one of the first things I learned to write in English was, apart from Kevin Keegan from Liverpool, was I want to be a film director. And so really from that moment, my journey began. My father was a wonderful, wonderful person who just helped me along the way. When I was, when I was 11, 12, 13, I was actually, he bought me this secondhand 8mm camera, which came with a spooling editor. So wow. He really put in place the tools for me to create, because the thing about filmmaking is you never really master the art. You can always, you know, learn enough to do it, but every film brings new challenges. So the best way to learn to become who you become is simply by doing. So my father knew that right from the very beginning, that it was something I needed to just become used to, kind of creating and just releasing that creativity. And really after that, it was a matter of I did art. My father was a designer, a graphic designer. So art was very much in my genes as such. So that helped in terms of storyboarding. And really, not being able to speak English at the very beginning didn't matter, because creativity doesn't necessarily rely on the words that you communicate with. You know, you can do it through pictures. And then that, of course, set me up in terms of telling stories, because filmmaking is telling stories through pictures. You know, of course, dialogue and so on are all part of it. But all the foundations were there. And then I went to study photography, design, and then went and did communication for film and TV, and I did production. And then very quickly, I found myself at the film studies that I was really mastering editing quite comfortably. So I would often lock myself away in these little edit suites. I made pals with security who knew I was there, and they'd turn a blind eye, because obviously even then you couldn't stay overnight, but I stayed overnight. And I would edit everybody's films for them. I mean, not everybody, but I found that when I finished at my sort of final show, everybody had their 1 or 2 movies that they'd done. I had about 8 or 9, you know, because it clicked that I thought, I'm going to need a showreel here. So, of course, a lot of the guys were doing great work at different kind of levels. But from an editor's point of view, it was quite an achievement to get different level of quality of imagery and then make something of it. So very, very quickly, I became quite popular on that front. And then when I came to having a portfolio, hey, you know, Mr. Editor here had plenty to show for it. So that worked
already ticked. You were well ahead of the game at that point then.
Well, I guess I must have been, because I did end up, and it did help me along the way. In terms of, I was making a lot of movies myself, and not all of them were very good. In fact, you know, I remember, I must go back to right at the very beginning when my dad got me. I decided to look. Let me tell you this. One of the things about the films I make, one of my biggest failures, even though all the films have been made, is the fact that I probably just think too big. You know, I should have made like 2 cast and 1 room. That's the kind of movie I should have made. Instead, I'm making an apocalyptic movie with 300 extras in a small town in Oxfordshire, and the logistics of trying to put that together, when on a tiny budget, is pretty damn, worrying at the time, because how do you chaperone 300 zombies? We did actually have an offer of about 1,000 zombies, but we just couldn't have the security to accommodate that in the middle of a high street in Banbury. So I think what happened, so when I was 13, I was trying to make these films, which I suppose the closest thing would have been Saving Private Ryan, even though it hadn't even been made at that time. But I wanted to have like soldiers running across sort of the little sort of hills, and I think I went to this kind of scrapyard, and I was having people running across the top of these kind of mounts and things, diving, and I was creating bullets from. Do you remember those little things that used to pop up? You used to bend them in upside down, and then suddenly leave them for a few seconds, and they were my bullets. So I used to put them and then put leaves on top of them. And then, of course, if you have enough of them, you'd have all these little things popping up, you see. So I was making these movies, right? And then all the way through, I was making music videos for my friends. I was making documentaries for my father did interior design. So whenever he did a restaurant, I would make videos for that restaurant, and I think not so long ago, well, actually it was a few years ago, but bear in mind that I worked in one of the restaurants when I was about 18, before I went off to film school, and I was just saving some money, so I was working in as many different places as I could to collect as much money as possible. And then a few years later, we had a bit of a friends reunion, quite a few years later, some 25 years later. And my friend at the time when I was working there, so the owner of the restaurant, said to me, "Oh, could you just record a little message for the happy birthday?" And it was Nicola's restaurant, and I remember it well. Sort of, everybody at Nicola's restaurant would like to wish you a happy birthday. The kind of thing they play, and then all the staff go, "Oh yeah, oh my gosh!" So I recorded that, and would you believe it? 25 years later, we go to that restaurant, right? Because obviously it was a point we all used to hang out in. And it's someone's birthday. And what comes out over the speakers 25 years later, me going, "Everybody at Nicola's restaurant." And I'm going, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to quickly hide under the table." So, yeah. Sorry, I'm going left field.
I mean, the thing about that is, it's like you hear that, you think, hang on a minute. If I'd have charged him usage fees, now I may...
Exactly. I was some loyalty. Thank you.
Brilliant stuff. I mean, listening to you there, obviously, it's interesting when you said you created pictures. I mean, the old word for movies was the pictures. We're going to the pictures, or it is a picture.
Yeah.
It's that old, visual thing. The old, and you spoke about editors as well. I think editors are the unsung heroes of movies. I mean, you watch me, you see the producer, you see the director, you see the editor. Very few people go, "Oh, so-and-so edited that movie." If you're in the business, you know how important an editor is and how big a say. Because it doesn't matter what, if you direct something on set, if the editor decides that that's not going to be in the movie, it's not there. The director's going back going, "Well, where's my bit?" Which is why so often you see director's cuts and you think, okay, the director had a different idea. I think we so often, and I know a couple of really good editors I've worked with recently, and, you think, they are so often so undervalued, or we should get an editor on. I mean, apart from the fact that we've got an editor with us today, we should get an editor on and say, "What do you do?" It just fascinates me that you tell that story, and that you started from that position of I know how to put these things together. Once you know how to do that, it's like an actor becoming, working their way from backstage to on stage. You've pretty much worked your way from a small dark room at the top of buildings with a security guard going, "Tony, you've got to go home now, mate." No, I was going to say that you've done, so much and so many influences. Is there one particular genre or area that really excites you? You think, "I just want to keep on making these movies and get better." Apart from having 1,000 zombies in Banbury, is there anything that makes you go, "That's the movie I want to make. That's where I'm going"?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can definitely nail that down to two particular movies. But I was just going to say one thing that I did end up working in that cinema that I went to when I was a little boy. As I said about the jobs, I was actually an usher there, and one of the great things that actually it did for me was being able to watch all these films for free.
Mm.
And in some cases, like even E.T., I mean, I watched that for it's three weeks or 3 months, whatever, almost, every for 3 or 4 times a day. And so I have probably watched E.T. some hundreds of times. What I did when I was watching that was looking at it through editor's eyes and a director's eyes. I'm a big fan of Spielberg, so it did be able to study the way these films were being constructed.
Mm.
So, of course, when you apply that to directing, there are different kinds of directors. There'll be the directors who really concentrate on the acting and the script, and there's those that are very technical and work with the DOPs very closely. I have to say that I tend to shoot. Because of the nature that it's low budget, you learn the hard way that sometimes you have to overshoot because you have to get yourself out of a lot of sticky situations because you don't have the budget for preparation, or you don't have the budget to be able to have the number of people that you need. And sometimes you work with all sorts of level of actors, and sometimes things go your way or they don't. So from that point of view, you do tend to kind of cover yourself. So you're always, in my case, I'm always filming and directing, composing imagery with it in mind as to how it's going to come together in the edit suite afterwards, because I am an editor. So I know when I'm filming, I know what shots I need straight away, even though I've storyboarded them. And in fact, when I'm storyboarding them, I know what shots I need to create that sequence in edit form. So in terms of genres, I threw myself into, apart from being a big fan of horror, the earliest of films that I remember, my father used to get me out of my bed at a midnight to watch these horror black and white films like Tarantula, the 1950s Tarantula. And I'd be saying,
Wow.
but Dad, I've got school tomorrow. And he goes, don't be so ridiculous. Come and watch this film. This film, I watched this film when I was your age and it really, really loved it. And you must experience that right now. And I said, yeah, but it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Shut up. The point being, you can see why I'm passionate about it, because he was passionate about films too. So horror was naturally something that I was going to tap into. However, again, there was some thinking behind it because we were making these films for peanuts, and therefore the business side of me made me realize that I needed to have films that will sell and that will bring a return to whoever invested in them. Because at the end of the day, whether it's I don't know, £25,000 to, 2.5 million or 200 million. It's a business, you still have to try and return the money. So I thought horror, I researched it, and horror always sells. So I figured that for me, certainly at the beginning of my career in terms of making feature films, which came after my success as being a head of creative for a lot of TV channels such as Disney and Sony, and I worked for children's ITV and all of these things. I knew that I needed to do it, build a portfolio of films. So I figured I'd give myself a few years to learn the art, make the mistakes that inevitably one's going to make, and then try and make it work as a business in terms of get the money back for the investors. And horror does that. So of course I did do horror, but I've loved comedy as well. So of course hey, I made a movie about killer bunnies. So, you have to have a sense of humor to make that. And inevitably you use what you know, and there was a lot of horror in it. So that was my first bunch of movies. But now that I've done that, I'm really endeavoring to put myself where I believe I need to be. And that's working on 2 Latin American projects that I still have lots of horror movies that I want to make, and comedy horror movies. But to answer your question in a very long-winded way, I have 2 projects which are very much putting the Latin American culture into a global stage. So I have a very kind of autobiographical, although it isn't totally me, but it comes from my heart. It's called Angelito, which came very close to being made by Sony itself, but a very long-winded story that I'll save for another occasion. Is that basically it didn't quite make it, but I know that I've got a script that's good enough to go to the top. And I'm hoping that that's what's going to happen this year, if not definitely the next. And that's going to be, I think, the Oscar winner. But every director likes to dream of it. But you need to think big. You've
got to think big.
Exactly. So that's a drama. That's very much just a full-on drama. And then I have the Latin American musical, which is embracing everything that is Latin American, from its culture, its color, its festive, and its people, and its music and dance, and putting it together in quite a simple story, which is all about engaging an international audience, and it's entertaining them the way that Grease entertained me, because Grease, the musical, was great music, great cast. The story is really simple. It's a love story, boy meets girl, and so on. In this case, it's just a woman taking back her father's ashes back to Chile, where he came from, thinking that she's going to have this hero's welcome, and actually discovers the reasons why he left. But along the way, he's introduced to this wonderful world of culture and color, which is Latin America. You know, there's Latin American music is very popular, and I really want to kind of exploit it as much as possible, but in an entertaining way. Amazing. So those are the two kind of things I'm really pushing, alongside a slate of work that we're going to be releasing very soon, and then within that are more horrors as well, and thrillers and action films like Blade of the Assassin.
Wow! So just you kind of gone from, I'll do what makes sense while still having a passion for it, to I will do what I am enormously passionate about and make sense from it. If that, it's a weird way of looking at it, I appreciate, but I think your story certainly stands out as one that you had an end goal. This is what I want to achieve, and you set yourself that sort of time frame, or in your mind you're going for it. And the great thing is that you've achieved the first step, but as soon as you've hit that step, you've already pushed the boundary beyond. And I think it shows in your work and the things that I've seen that you've done, and just looking at the fact that you've been in the industry for 30 plus years and are constantly working and churning out incredible stuff. As you say, you're never going to learn everything. You're never going to be at a point where you go, there's nothing more I can learn or nothing more I can expand upon or improve. But being aware of that and encompassing that into your work and going, this movie I've just made is better than the last one, but that just means there's further the next one can go, and that certainly stands out. Do you have anything that you haven't ventured into yet at all, that's in sort of in your mind going maybe one day, or are you still sort of focus on the big goals rather than the ones that I haven't even got to yet?
Yeah, completely. I mean, as a creative, you won't just have your immediate portfolio of films that you want to make now. You immediately think one day. I would love to one day make a version telling the story of Victor Jara, which was a folk singer in Chile who was murdered in the national stadium that became in Chile, in Santiago, which became a prison for all the political prisoners. And Victor Jara was an incredible singer who basically put his life, in front of his passion for telling the truth through music and poems. And he really touched a lot of the nation, because he was an honest, kind man who just cared so much about the truth. And you got to think about how many people were all being tortured, my uncle being one of them. And therefore that's why we all left, you see, because genuinely my family didn't want to leave. My uncle and my father didn't want to leave a beautiful country like Chile, but there was no other option. So the point being is that Victor Jara really was an incredible artist. And he was basically arrested and then killed in the center of the stadium to make a point of. They told him to perform, broke his fingers, and executed him, basically. It's very touching story, a beautiful story about a very talented man. And I think that creatively, I'm not quite ready for it yet. I kind of feel I need to make Angelito first and really move away from this kind of comic kind of environment that I've been in with horror and comedy and action, which I love and I adore. And it's been a wonderful book of education. But I think when you move on to that, you've got to have some serious experience behind you. You've got to really understand the art, not only from a technical point of view, but from the script and the acting. You have to really gain that experience that's going to then deliver the greatest piece of work that you've ever made. And I know that one day soon, I feel I could do that. But I'm also respectful to my own abilities, that I'd rather not rush into it. So I guess all my life, I've always been quite calculating. I've always tried to plan and give myself the best chances that I could, because sometimes you only get a limited number of opportunities. And if you're not prepared for them as good as you can be, it could be a wasted chance. So if you're going to lose it, at least lose it knowing that you've put your head up high and you can say, do you know what? I gave this the best shot I could, because you're never always going to get it right. So you want to try and do the best you can. It's all about trying the best you can, and nothing wrong with failure, because it's always a lesson. I've never been scared of getting it wrong. I've worked for some of the biggest TV channels in the world, and I can't say I've ever got it right every single time, but I was there for 11 years at Sony as head of creative for networks. So I must have done something right, but I was very humbled to know that I was in a very privileged position. So I made the most of it. That taught me how to work finances, taught me how to work with people, taught me how to deal creatively on brands and so on. And then you apply all of that knowledge to making little tiny budget movies when people look at them and go, I really can't believe you did that for £25,000. And that's because all this wealth of experience teaches you to look things out of the box. Sorry for that cliche, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. It's creatively, it's a fine line, isn't it? Because we put ourselves in a position, all creatives put themselves in a position of really trying hard and risk. And if you don't risk, it's barely worth trying. If you're not going to take the risk, then don't do it. We all know the risk of entering the industry is like, the risk is you may never work, or you may reach great heights. But if you don't take the chance, it's not worth doing it. It's not worth, having a go. It's not worth, loving what you do if you're not going to put yourself on the line. And there is always that risk of falling from a great height, or, making the great heights. And with you said you've got a lot happening, and the passion, I can see that Latin American passion and drive. And of course, you talked about Chile as well and what happened there. And politically, it was an incredible story, an incredible time, which we know very little about. And you say you are a champion for your Latino roots and what happened to those, to yourself, your family. I mean, that's a personal journey. You had to escape. That's a story in itself worth telling, which you told us a bit about today. But the fact that you have heroes, you have national heroes that we don't know anything about, that their stories are worth telling. Everyone's story is worth telling, in a way, for the man on the street. But that man, that he put himself, he was a face of his country, the face of his country's struggle. That is a beautiful story. And you say you've got. I mean, we're winding up shortly, but what have you got on the slate? What is upcoming? I mean, I know obviously you're incredibly busy. There must be loads of stuff that is sitting on that slate ready to go.
Yeah, there is, and I think any good producer, director will always be planning their next move, and I've teamed up with Ty Naylor, who is incredibly talented co-producer, working with me on a number of projects, and we have soon to announce this very strong commercial mainstream sort of portfolio of films that we're going to shout about. We've been able to collect a nice number of contacts, commissioners, executive producers. Of course, until they put the money in front of you and it's signed and dealed, you just have to keep fighting to find those funds. And we have a really nice, fun collection of movies that, of course, we've been making these comedy horrors and succeeding very well from them. So we're inevitably going to try and create a few more of those. And we do with maybe a little bit more seriousness, but we have some wonderful a new angle on Robin Hood, where it's a supernatural angle. There's the whole idea of the dark forest and these guys being very, very seriously. I was going to swear, but seriously fucked up, basically, in a very which I think you said I can.
You can.
You're more than
But
welcome.
they're all, yeah, and they're all kind of like werewolves and nasty creatures, all in the heart of Sherwood Forest. So we have that really wonderful, wonderful script, and we also have. I'm looking at my list because it's when you get thrown into this situation, you kind of suddenly remember your own name. And we have Angel of Death, which is a great sort of thriller, action thriller, which is about a guy who survives, comes back from the death, and becomes the dead people's executioner. So they basically contact him to do their dirty work. So we have that, and we've actually filmed a lot of these teaser proof of concept sequences, videos to show that we can do this. Of course, we've done them for very little budget, but I think within them we've worked with some great professional stunt people like Mark Johnston and Rig Manning, who've really helped us along the way. And we've just shot Suicide Platoon, which we did shoot as a pilot for Movies for Men, and now we've redone it completely. And it turned out so well. We shot it. We had a fantastic cast and crew for a World War II drama that we shot recently up in just south of the Midlands, and it worked out so well that we've turned that into now a short film. So what was originally going to be the tool to just simply show as a proof of concept, we've actually shaped it into a wonderful little short film, so that we thought it would be really nice for everyone who contributed, for it to kind of see it out there rather than just as a tool kind of for executives. So look out for that. That's called A Minefield. And it's nearly complete. That'll be ready in the next couple of weeks. But of course, we've got a full length feature film of that ready to go. We also have Tunnel Rats, which has been written brilliantly by a guy called Kevin Powis. And that's kind of like a supernatural Vietnam movie, utilizing the tunnels that all used to be down there. And it's a scary, scary film. Wow. Kevin's absolutely genius. And we've got obviously Angelito and Playa Marina, which were the Latin projects. And I'm sure that, you'll hear all about it very, very soon. So please, when you do, spread the word.
We'll make sure, as always, we always share your social medias and your website links so people can get in contact or keep in touch or look at what's coming up. Tony, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much for giving up your time today. Just how busy you are is impossible to explain, and we know you've got to run off. But before you do escape, can we ask you one small favour? Can we finish up with an anecdote, a story, something silly, something funny, something strange, something from your career that just sticks out in your mind? Go.
Right. Well, quite recently, and in fact, it happened similarly a bit earlier, but I happened to be in the Cotswold, getting a coffee with a friend, and then I go up to pay, and randomly the person's about to take my money leans forwards a bit mysteriously and says, "Excuse me, but are you a film director?" What? Yeah, I'm a film director. Of course, yes, of course I am. And he just said, "Oh, are you Tony Jopia?" I went, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, your films are really shit." And I went, "Oh, thanks. Thanks." He goes, "No, I'm joking. I love your movies. I love your films. You did the zombie film." And I went, yeah. And he says, "Yeah, I saw an interview of you, and you did that werewolf movie." And I went, "Oh man, gee whiz, how to take me up there and push me off the cliff."
God.
But fortunately, he put a parachute on me, and I got there. Yeah, so that was great. That was a real boost to the ego.
In the middle of nowhere, getting noticed.
Random.
Absolutely fully insulted, but then brought back up again quickly.
Yeah, he had a great sense of humour.
Brilliant. As I said, Tony, thank you so much for joining us today. Can I say it was an absolute pleasure working with you on Blade the Assassin. Everything is crossed that we get another opportunity to be on set together again, and that movie in particular comes out very soon. But huge congratulations on all you've achieved, and the best of luck with everything that's coming. Keep in contact, keep us updated, and hopefully we can get you back on somewhere down the line where you can go, everything's in production or everything's done, or we're on to the next big thing. So
brilliant. Thank you very much, guys. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much, Tony. Brilliant.
Absolute pleasure. We'll see you soon. Take care, mate. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And there he goes, to complete what is obviously a very, very full slate. He's got so much in production. I mean, Tony Jopia, what an incredibly interesting past he's had. And he's turned that right round to make an incredible, a great story and a great career. Fabulous guy.
Just brilliant. And I mean, everyone who's been on the show has been passionate about what they do. There's no question of that. But Tony shaped his whole life around it and almost had, from a very, very young age, one plan. Obviously, there are lots of ways he could go about it, but he knew, and that just shows the true love he has for his craft. And he talked about obviously doing the different jobs within it, and not just, right, I'm a director, I'm going to direct. We've talked about it before. By knowing different elements of what's there, just streamlines the process, doesn't it? Like, you can help an editor out by having an eye of an editor and going, well, if I do this now, down the line, it becomes easier, or it becomes more straightforward, or, oh, I understand why the director of photography is doing that, because I know that. So by learning different roles, or at least having an understanding of those different things, the end result is better. I think that's the simple way.
I mean, you see it in so many, complete filmmakers. The great filmmakers know everything. They've been behind the camera, in front of the camera, in the editing suite. And it's almost like a potter. They start with this lump of clay. They build it, and they know every part of the process to produce this beautiful work of art that they absolutely adore. And that hands-on, creativity. I'm really fascinated by that, by his, his work ethic and where he comes. And those first stumbling steps, as were taken in a cinema.
Yeah.
Whether that's I want that to be true. I mean, I want that to be true. As far as I'm concerned, that's true, Tony.
Well, absolutely. We can't prove otherwise. So
no,
it's true. But it's true. A fascinating guy, an enormously talented man, and a joy to have on the podcast yet again, mate. We have smashed it out the park with another wonderful guest.
Brilliant stuff.
We can't fail, mate, at this. We've got this nailed. We know how to do this, and it's all because of other people's talents. That's
exactly because next week we'll take a dip because it's just going to be you and me, mate.
Well, it is, but we've got something special planned, haven't we?
Now that is true. Yes,
we're not going to spoil anything at all. All we're going to say is everything is different next week. Literally everything is different.
Everything is different next week. Yeah,
everything that you know to be normal and regular and routine with Drewling Samantics out the window, gone,
thrown it away.
You do not want to miss it. Look, honestly, make
true.
Sure you tune in next week, because I'm going to be here. Are you going to be here?
And our surprise.
Oh, and the surprise. Yes. So if that isn't enough to intrigue you, then, what more can we do? But join me, Drew, and the slightly altered Drewling Samantics next week. Ladies and gents, thank you for joining us. Thank you again to Tony. Drew, love you, mate. See you soon.
And you, mate. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks again for watching this episode of Drewling Samantics.
Please make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video.
Don't forget, we're also available as audio only. Just search Drewling Samantics in any good podcast app. And please support us on social media. All our links and handles are on screen now.
We love welcoming new followers and subscribers, so why not share with your family and friends so they can join in too? Thanks very much. See you next time.